one owner, the argument would be virtually the same as with the apartment complex, right? You know, would incentivize that
most
one owner.
Are most, there's one parcel?
I think there's a little bit of both.
Okay.
We've subdivided.
You could define it as just, if it's a mobile home, it's 0.7 regardless of the situation. So if it...
You know, that might be not a bad idea.
And it'd be still, the mobile homeowner would pay at a 0.7 rate.
I guess, from the, thinking about a subdivided mobile home park where the individuals do own the lot and they actually own the dirt, they went through the subdivision process, and they have individual lots, kind of feels to me like in that situation you've ended up with a single family.
Typically much smaller than a parcel size.
It's true. That's true, smaller family size. Yeah.
So,
I can go either way. I don't feel strong.
Okay, so then it sounds like we have at least 3 options, probably more. One would be to count it as a single-family residence, the way Tim has done it already. The other would be to move them and count them as multifamily residential, or take Marcus's idea, which is to just say, if it's a mobile home, we're going to give you a 0.7 factor, regardless of whether you own your little patch of earth or not, because you're in between. You like his? Yeah. I like his too.
Even though I was pushing for something else, I like Marcus's. Seems simple.
Like Marcus's idea. How about that? How about you? That's
sure.
Okay. So we like that idea.
All mobiles, regardless of ownership or the way they're licensed or what have you, will be 0.7.
0.7.
Okay.
And that's even if there's over 41 units.
Well, that's what started this conversation.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I asked the question.
I know.
well, in this case, you're not asking the property owner to pay the bill, so it isn't the property owner paying a large bill.
Well, it is. In many cases. We have 100 coaches in a park and property owner.
I'm trying to visualize how many are over. We have a lot of properties, mobile home parks that are larger than
100 or over 40. I mean, Capitola has probably 5. No.
Yeah, over 40, yeah, but not over 100. I mean, over 40 we have.
4,000 mobile homes, it appears, roughly
Really?
within the county.
A lot of mobile
A lot.
4,000 parks or units?
Total units.
We have more mobile home parks with more than 100 units than apartment complexes with over 100 units. And in the past, the mobile home park owners have proved litigious.
Yeah.
They've broken 2 out of the 4 cities here.
Okay, so at this point, we're leaning towards the 0.7 for all mobile home, regardless of whether they own the bottom ground or not. That sounds like it makes sense to everybody.
It seems like it's a balance, because you do have, like I said, a mix of those that are single parcels, those that are more like multifamilies, but they are sort of...
And if the mobile home is owned by a nonprofit and operated as a low-income mobile home, and they're tax exempt.
If they're tax exempt, we haven't included them at all in this.
Okay.
So, I mean, they're certainly akin to a townhome or something, right, for a fairly dense type situation. So you could get that. There's probably a handful of people that have a mobile on a 4-acre parcel. They'll get a little bit of a discount, but, it's probably could count that on, a couple of hands.
Yeah, I don't think it's a big issue. Okay, so I think we're there then. All right, so if we could write that up for the next iteration, we could at least have a memorialization of what we've kind of moved towards.
So, at the October 15th LFFA meeting, you can either have a summary or the first draft of the entire rate portion.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you so much, Marcus. And thank you, Tim. I know you've done a lot of work, and it always seems like it should be easier than it is. So I apologize and recognize that. So appreciate your help. Okay, are there members of the audience who'd like to address us on the issue of rate and apportionment before we move on? Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Bruce Holloway from Boulder Creek. I like the discussion, and a lot of points were covered there, and it all made sense. The only thing that disturbed me was when I heard 0.5, because I guess from most of the people in the library service area are in the unincorporated part of the county. And when I saw those numbers yesterday about how much revenue is going to come from the county versus the city, I feel like in Santa Cruz, they already have better library services than we do in the unincorporated part of the county, because you can ride a bicycle to this branch, which is the biggest one. So to get down to that 0.5 number, I mean, if you're still considering that, I just feel like you're sacrificing equity because of this feeling that there's some landlords that are going to oppose this measure. And I really want to support the measure, but if it turns out that you're raising so little revenue in the city of Santa Cruz compared to the unincorporated part of the county, I just feel like it's inequitable. So the 0.5, I hope you can go away from that. Thanks.
Okay. Any other comments from the audience? Yes, please, Mr. Lee.
Hi, I'm Mark Lee again, Van Woolman. Probably know of me. I'm an ex-city planner and also a real estate appraiser, so I'm very familiar with the land use and the cost of properties in the area. First of all, there are about 38 mobile homes in the area. Only 3 of the mobile homes have where you have ownership of the parcels. So it's a very small minority. Most people own an undivided interest in the properties, in the total property, and they pay a fee, including water fees, and they get a bill from the management. I have a real big problem with this. Now I'm just getting a really kind of a sense for what's going on here. I think your premise is wrong here in terms of the cost assessment that you're looking at in terms of construction. I think we need to go back to the table, go back to your offices and rethink this whole project out here for forming a county LFFA where the county is not benefiting, whereas the cities and the urban areas are. I think there should be a separation from the county in terms of us raising our own revenues and let the cities do their own thing. Scotts Valley has certainly sufficient tax base. The city of Santa Cruz has a great tax base. I'm looking at exorbitant costs for the Aptos, cost of reconstruction and modernization of their existing proposal, way out of sync. These construction costs are very inflated, by I'd say as much as 50%. I think you need to really slow down, go back and look at the numbers. I think this is really overreaching. Just look at using my example. My property tax will go up 12% based on your current formulas that you're proposing. Second of all, I don't think you realize that we have close to, I'd say, 38,000 retirees who are AARP, fixed income people who rely on their Social Security checks and whatever pension funds they have, and every dollar counts every month. So when you're proposing a 12% increase in property tax, that's a lot of money to think about. You may not think of it, the $49 per parcel per unit. In the case of single-family residential units is a lot. I think it's you'll find that there'll be a lot of retirees who will push back on this. I think you need to go back to the drawing boards, separate the cities and the counties in this proposal. The counties should be working on their own particular fundraising methodologies. Cities, let them stand on their own. They have their own tax base. And these are my comments. And I hope you'll agree with them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other? All right. So the next item is 6B, which is the bond proceeds distribution. And this was included in our packet on page 10. And then I think, let's see, did we get the additional handout, Nicole?
Yeah, I have a copy.
Yeah, can I get another copy of that? So, I don't know if we want to hear another staff report, or did you want to give us another staff report, or?
I haven't received any other updates, or no one asked me to run any other scenarios, but I'm happy to talk about it some more. Does anyone else need a copy?
Okay, and so by way of background, and I really don't want to get into a lengthy discussion about Mr. Lee's comments, but let's just remind ourselves of how we got to where we are. You know, this process started several years ago with a number of needs assessments being done at the library. There was a technology needs assessment. There was a staffing plan revision that was done as a result of some substantial changes in financing after the Great Recession, and as a result of the loss in revenues associated with the recession. And the considerable, excuse me, deferred maintenance was identified. I'm sorry, I've got bad allergies. The deferred maintenance was identified as a significant issue, and our libraries needed to function in a more responsible way than what they had been able to do with the resources that we have available, given the sort of changes in technology that had occurred. And so we commissioned, the library board commissioned a facilities needs assessment, which was put together by Group 4, is that what it's called? Group 4, which is an architectural and design firm out of, was it Palo Alto, I think?
No, South San Francisco.
South San Francisco. And they're a very good firm that did a uniform review of all of the branches and all of the systems and procedures, and basically came up with this analysis, which was, in my opinion, a competent staff review of what all the needs were of the library system. It was a generalization. It is not a specific plan. It's not something we're putting out to bid. It's not a construction document. It is basically a planning tool to assist us in identifying what the needs are. And so that came back to the library board, and the expectation, given the expansive requirements, was that we consider the possibility of a tax measure to be brought to the voters for them to decide. And so that's what we are doing today. It will clearly be something that the voters will have to make a decision about. It's not our decision. It'll be up to the voters to decide. And our hope is that if we put something together that is responsible and reasonable, we will be able to encourage the voters to see the wisdom of investing in their library services for the future. Now, as to the Aptos branch, and I'm sure this is true of other aspects of the facilities needs assessment as well, the plan is not just to do an upgrade of the facilities, but a major expansion there. And that has to do with the fact that the utilization of that branch has really gone through the roof. So I think, given what we've been doing the last 2.5 years to try and make sense out of all of these things, we've gotten through a deliberative process. We're trying to come up with a strategy that makes sense to everyone. And our hope is that because we are such a small community, that we can do it as a system rather than to try and duplicate each other's systems by breaking apart and doing them individually. We believe that a unified system has its advantages, and we would like to try and maintain that unified system if we possibly can. And so that's our hope, and I think we're all working in that general direction, and we're going to keep our fingers crossed that we can accomplish that objective. If not, we might have to reconsider all of the above and try to figure out, well, then how do we move forward in a positive way without some of those goals having been met, but until we get a sense from the voters about their willingness on these facility issues, it's a little premature to reach those questions.
Susan?
Yeah.
Can I just add just a little bit more background information?
Yes, please, I
before you
appreciate it.
continue? Just with respect to the question of the cost of the estimates for the various branches, because Group 4, they did a pretty comprehensive analysis of the cost. They walked through all the facilities, and then when they came back, because when you do the square footage calculations, they are really high from what we certainly are used to seeing on a normal basis. But they do include fully outfitting the branches, so it's just not the construction cost of the building itself, it's also outfitting everything. And then in addition, because again, the numbers were very high, we did have local independent contractors, including at Michael's Over and DevCon, review the numbers as well to make sure that they were pretty, fairly reasonably done and calculated. So they're not, a broad stroke in terms of the calculations.
Yeah,
There's some substantial analysis.
I believe the JPA board formed a specific committee to dig in with, local contractors and actually putting a cost estimator on their contract to review and refine the numbers. So they're certainly
Correct.
not just pulled out of the hat.
No.
Yeah, correct. I just want to clarify that there was some, substantial
And
analysis.
everybody knows their planning estimates. They're not intended to be, like I say, bid estimates, but you don't want to start your planning estimates by saying, you need $10 and then find out that you need 20. You want to start by saying, I need 20, and then if you only need 10, you've got good news, So,
But I think it's important just to note that the scope is more than what you would normally would have when you bid out for just a construction project.
Right.
It's outfitting the facilities, and then there was some rigorous analysis. Okay.
okay. So yesterday we were talking about ways to kind of approach the discussion about possible distribution of the proceeds, and then there was a question about, okay, what are the proceeds and what are we thinking is reasonable? And I think at one point we made clear that our initial requests were somewhere in the $72 million range, but we brought it back to about $60 million based on what was the initial polling at that time. And then there were some questions that were raised by Jamie about, well, what if we came to a lower level? How would we approach that? And we didn't really answer that question, but could talk about that today if people want to. And Nicole had put together a list of 10 options. There's probably a list of 110 options that might make sense to look at instead of just this list of 10. But, you got to start somewhere. So here you go. And again, I think we have heard that we're trying to be responsible to a number of goals, and I think Nicole outlined them in her text. She said we wanted to make sure that they're equitable countywide, that they're reasonably related to the populations and the tax measures that where it would be generated, that it begins to address the needs identified by the facilities master plan and reflects a broad set of community interests to create maximum voter support. And I think that's code to say that in order to be successful, it's really got to be all things to all people. So with that in mind, I hope everybody has brought their compromise to the table here, and we'll be able to come up with some suggestions that we would be willing to take forward to our policy boards about what our recommendations might be. So other comments at this point? Martine?
Sure. I definitely think that it certainly is important to, whatever comes forward, there has to be an overall good consensus, because I think obviously if you do have any kind of significant opposition, that would just derail the entire measure. So having a consensus and broad-based support is clearly important. And that's what we struggled with yesterday. Obviously, if somebody is not happy, that is not a good thing. So So that compromises a measure. So I think, and again, I think it's important to consider all the various aspects to try to come up with something that works, that meets all the requirements that you outlined, but also gets the work done in a reasonable fashion that makes sense, that's consistent also with the needs of the library system and the uses of the library systems as well. And I'm certainly open to coming up with some kind of compromise. Now I think actually Gene had the best idea yesterday when he said that what we really need to do is come up with a way to meet everybody's requirements, do the entire wish list, the 70 million. So that's certainly option one, preference one, but perhaps that's not realistic. And we can work on that. I guess if we can get there, then we're there. But we'll see if that's really going to be the case or not. Short of that, we have also the other question, the other possibility, which is that it may be even smaller than what we come up here with in terms of what might be more reasonable, the $60 million. Maybe it's a $50 million, and there's no plan for that, so that makes it also a challenge. So there's questions even there moving forward once we do the polling and get more information. It may be that it's just not doable because the numbers are to compromise. In looking at the various options, the one that I think might work for us, and certainly can talk to the city council, is one where we look at the various needs and then do more of across the board, so reduction or haircut approach. That we played with some options like that in the past that we've discussed, where basically each of the entities essentially takes some responsibility for making up the difference. So something along those lines I think would be something that I'd be sort of open to exploring and looking at. We have to find something that that works to do that.
So starting at any of these options and then cutting them more, is that what you're saying?
No, there was some scenarios that I think Nicole and Carlos put together previously that had basically started off with the...
I think it would be option 2, which was the facilities
Yes.
needs assessment.
Yes.
And then reducing that.
Yes. So it's a combination of these.
Yeah.
Something along those lines.
Okay, so here's my problem with option 2, is it doesn't address all the needs of the county, and it, I mean, we'd have to start with, in my opinion, with a project request in that instance, and then maybe take that as the basis and do some reductions off of that, because that was the problem with the facilities needs assessment, is that we all wanted to add things to it, and some of those things got added and some of them didn't, so maybe if we started with option 1.
Well, so if we took option 1 and took it down 15% across the board,
somebody has to...
eyeballing it, it looks like Capitol would be 850, county would be somewhere around 22.5, Santa Cruz would be somewhere around, is that less than 15%, so that would be 25. Scotts Valley would be at 4, right? 4.2. Then 50% off the 71 million.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's really a good way to do it.
I'm not sure it is either. I mean, it's sort of the meat cleaver approach, right?
Well, and I think, I know that, Steve's council has been pretty vocal about their concerns with regard to other communities, and I just don't think they're rational, because they're comparing a jurisdiction that has 13,000 people with a jurisdiction that has 3 times that number in the sort of smallest of ways of looking at it. So I don't understand why they're so connected to that idea other than, it's a political statement. I don't know.
I mean, we do have a new branch, but I mean, it wasn't free, and our taxpayers paid for that. And, now we're going to ask them to pay for other branches. You paid for this branch, now we're going to ask you to pay for other branches. And as we mentioned yesterday, I don't think that's going to sit well with the residents. So I think they need to see that they're getting something out of this as well.
Right.
So.
But something doesn't have to be what another jurisdiction with 3 times the population has, right? I mean, if you look at the option 4, which is the amount of tax based on the model that we were using prior to the discussions we've had today and yesterday, the amount of tax generated by Scotts Valley would be about $3 million. And, again, depending upon which scenario you choose, to me, that doesn't seem like an unreasonable, allocation.
Do you think you could, with your council, help them understand that if there was 3 million in, 3 million out, that at that point, it's still a good deal? I mean, it's still...
I'll take that deal. You give me what I get in now, and I'll be happy. I want to be treated like Scotts Valley.
You want to be treated like Scotts Valley? I mean, what I'm trying to do is just looking at option 1 or option 2, whichever one we're going to come up with. And if we say option 1 and we're going to then, take everybody down 15% and tweak, do you think we could, convince Scotts Valley that, 3 million in, 3 million out, which would give us another, based on the numbers I was suggesting, another $1 million to play with? You move that into the county. Is that a number we can live with?
In some ways, that you're adjusting option 10. You're coming up with a new version, option 10.
But it's not arbitrary.
It's
well thought out.
It's a new, well thought out. Remember, I said she said it was arbitrary because she didn't want to have her.
I have to explain.
Wonderful.
Well, I mean, I think yeah. Okay, so we could go back there, but I think that the primary issue with option 10 is that when you look across the board between the difference between option 1 and option 10 is that most jurisdictions have all come down pretty significantly, except for the county, and so presumably looking at a more equitable reduction from option 1, I started with 15% across the board, and then maybe there's a few tweaks.
Well, then let's start with option 4 and talk about the reductions from option 4. See, you guys got to understand that the way the county is looking at it, and we've tried to express this in the context of the facilities master plan, is that while the facilities master plan did an excellent job of identifying the needs of buildings, it did not identify the needs of the library system overall. And I think you need to recognize that the county's library systems, the county's portion of the library system is in need of things that are different than the things that are in need of improvements in the city's main branch in particular, because it has some really significant needs that we've all talked about, and the new branches at Capitola and the changes that Scotts Valley wants to do. I mean, we need to do them all. So you guys got to help me accomplish what I need to accomplish. And quite frankly, my bottom line, and again, I put this out there because I wanted you to not get into a whole big discussion, because my bottom line is I need to have what I need to have in order to make it make sense for the county. And for me to take a reduction from 40 million to 26 million, I'm going to have a heck of a time convincing the voters that I have to convince that that's a good deal in the name of the system. And I'm willing to try to do that, but I'm not willing to try to do it if I now don't get my $10 million improvements in Aptos. I don't want to do it. And Zach, who's on the library board, he's like, oh my God, first I had 10 million, then I had 6 million, then I had 7 million, now it's 8 million, and he doesn't want to be, kind of like advocating for his own branch, because that's the district he represents. But it is something that's weighing very heavy on his mind, that he wants to be able to make sure that the branch gets what it needs. And what it needs is that that $10 million renovation. So if Aptos needs 10, and we need 10 for Felton, and we need something for Live Oak, and we need something for the small branches, 26 million becomes our number, and that's the number we're sticking to. So
you're saying that there's not room on the 26 million?
no, there's not. And that's a substantial reduction out of 40 million, and I think it is very reasonable and very generous, and you should say thank you. That's my take on it. And I know that probably, makes everybody want to screech on a blackboard, but,
The challenge for me is that I think whatever we do has to reflect, the way the libraries operate in general, which is a, county-wide scale. And the uses, the uses of the branches vary considerably. And people are allowed to use every branch and use them in different ways. And like I said yesterday also, there are some pieces of the downtown branch that are also system-wide improvements that will maintain all the other branches, all the technology, the access to the collections and all that sort of thing. So that's the part that I'm having a hard time with, because I understand the need to have equity and to accomplish the things that people need to accomplish. I understand that. But I think also we have to take into account the way the system operates and how it functions and the way people use it. Because I think most residents out there, they see all the libraries as their branches, and they use them as they need to. And people in the county move around and do different things. It's sort of like the county buildings in the city of Santa Cruz, but so what? It's a county facility, and that's the way the downtown branch is. Essentially, in my view, it's really a county branch, really, because it's where many of the residents that live in the county come and use it because they either work down here or because they come down to do their shopping and whatnot. So that's the part that I'm trying to sort of make sure that we accomplish in here, is that we improve the system in a way that it works and functions. And if we have the ideal model, we can get what everybody wants, it's great. But if we're going to then compromise not being able to accomplish, the basic core functions of the library system, it becomes difficult. Again, I think, like I said, I'm certainly willing to have the city take on if we can't get everything, to be able to fill a gap if needed. But I think we all have to do that.
Thinking about other analogies, I know that the RTC is talking about something for the highways, for the roads. And there's obviously associated with the distribution of those funds, decisions about where they're going and who's getting it. And Watsonville isn't at the table, but Watsonville, for example, doesn't touch Highway 1. So at the end of the day, they're going to get less dollars into the city of Watsonville than per capita the county would, or maybe the city of Santa Cruz, which has chunks of Highway 1 in it. And I think we can all accept the fact that Highway 1 is a regional infrastructure facility, that even if you don't happen to be a jurisdiction that has a lot of highway in it, still serves us all. And I think to the extent we can think about the libraries the same way, the Capitola branch is in the same district as Live Oak. So maybe we just need to be thinking about this more in terms of the districts for the county, making sure that the overall distribution, not worry so much about the city boundaries, but kind of think about it in terms of chunks of the county, and that we're serving the residents in each chunk of the county in an equitable way. My concern is that if we're stuck at 26 at the county, there's just no way to square the circle. If we can get to 23, I sort of can imagine.
Well, I guess I just don't understand where the problem is. I haven't heard what can't be done with the allocations in option 10. We heard Scotts Valley needs another 500,000 maybe under that model. What else is wrong? I mean, the main branch estimate is very significant. I mean, it's a lot of money. And it's a big estimate with a big project. And I'm not saying that, you know, that it's wrong. I'm not saying that. But if you told me that, okay, you know, you don't have 28 million to do the main branch, you have 20 million to do the main branch, I could come up with a pretty good plan to do a $20 million renovation of the main branch. I'm confident that I would come up with a great plan to do it. So it would be different than the way the estimate was developed by Group 4, but I don't think that would make Group 4's estimate wrong. I just think it would be something that would have to be thought of differently. It's kind of like I was saying yesterday, when we have $100 million of deferred maintenance, I can't expect the board to give me $100 million over the course of the next few years. But when I go in is I say, okay, here's the first 10 priorities, and let's work on getting these done, and then I'll get to the next 10 priorities. And so with the main branch, I think we can do a great job. I'm as committed to that as anybody in this room, I think. I mean, I don't know why people feel like, you know, that we don't see the value of the system. I mean, we're sitting here, I mean, you talk about the operational costs. I mean, we have a budget annually. The lion's share of the budget, when you look at the distribution of the resources across the system, the lion's share of the budget are spent on the main branch operations, and as they should be, because that's the branch that's open the maximum number of hours. That's the branch that provides the services for the special collections. That's the branch that, you know, offers a lot more programming than other branches do. So, I mean, it's not unreasonable, but again, it's utilizing those resources operationally. So I feel like we're making a tremendous commitment, and to go ahead and to say, well, okay, we're going to generate 40 million, but we're only going to ask for 26, I think to ask me to come down off of that number is unreasonable. And somebody else ought to, you know, tell me why that 20 million might not be a sufficient number for the main branch. But
Well, I mean, isn't that why the board hired the consultant to do the facility studies, to do the analysis, to have a sort of rational basis for, I mean, as you pointed out, you know, at the very beginning, the library system, you know, has been going through a series of changes. And, you know, first of all, like you said, you know, the operations model had to be amended and changed to reflect the fiscal reality that the library system had to adapt to. They've done that successfully, I think. That doesn't mean that as things get better, things can't be changed in the future based on needs or whatever makes sense. And then the next logical thing, and again, and it's not something new, it's something that's been a desire for, you know, years and years, decades, which is then to, and then actually part of the operating model and the premise there, which was, I think, something the county really wanted, was that we're not going to change to a system that has, you know, less branches. We're going to focus on maintaining and operating our 10 branches. So to me, it just seems like the logical extension to that, okay, if we're going to have 10 branches in this system, then we need to have them renovated and functioning in a modern way. We need to update them to a modern way. So that's what the facility study was trying to accomplish. That seems rational to me, that we're trying to update existing facilities to meet existing needs for all of the residents in the county, regardless of where they live. Because I think geography, you know, for example, I suppose the collections could be housed somewhere else. It's just a matter of creating extra space somewhere else. I mean, there's variations like that. But it's, you know,
So, in an effort to try to move forward, Susan, looking at option 10 and seeing how much proportionally the other jurisdictions have got off from the requests, is there an option you see where we could bump Santa Cruz to 24, 25, get Scotts Valley so that they're flat even in, even out, $3 million?
Not taking it from the county, no.
What if capital will put in a little bit? I mean, we're already down 2 at this point. Another, we go down another 250, $250,000. You guys come up with 1.5. It gets everybody where they need to be.
Well,
At the end of the day, what we're talking about here is if we don't have a go, we don't have a go, and none of this is possible.
Right.
And I understand it's just not going to be all things to all people. We have to weigh this against the no project alternative, right?
The other thing too, Susan, in these numbers, again, like I mentioned earlier, this is not adjusted for the main branch in terms of what portion of the improvements are system-related portions too. So there's that piece of it too. We never divided it that way.
So you've said that several times already, and I don't want to underestimate the importance of it. Could you give me a perspective on that? Like, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I don't really know in those estimates, was there some large portion of that $20 million
I don't know,
plus?
Janice, I don't know if it was broken up that way, but the downtown branch houses, for example, the entire IT function. I don't know what the amount of square footage, and it also houses other aspects of the system that are, system-wide. Maybe you can describe them.
Right, it houses all of the IT, and partly because of its location, and we're able to expand to take advantage of dark fiber and broadband. So that makes the location and centering all of these things in this building important. This building also houses all of collection management services, and what that means is acquisition and ordering and all of the things having to do with all the collections at all of the branches. And then the reference team and the program team, which serves all of the branches, also the work out of this building, this place. We also have the genealogy collection. One of the issues there is that the collection is not being cared for in an environmentally proper room. And so one of the things about having a new downtown branch is that we would be able to care for those rare materials in the way that they should be so that they won't disintegrate. Those are the, I would say, the main kinds of system support things.
Would there be any logic to, in one of the new facilities we're talking about building, if genealogy is a specific need, there's a specific, issues associated with its storage, that if it went to an entirely new building, it would be reasonable to put it in one of the new buildings, or does it make sense to have it where some of these other uses you're talking about, co-locating with some of the other more central administration type uses? I don't know if that was clear.
No, I do understand. There isn't any reason why it couldn't be in a properly designed other building. It's here because we're close to the Museum of Art and History and the city center. It's easier for people who are doing that kind of research and those kinds of things because all other resources are central, but it could certainly be built the right thing.
It's logical. I get it. There's a certain logical, this is the Holmes County seat here, it's in the center of everything, right? But, I'm trying to look under every rock here. Trying to find a way to crack this. So Susan, I see you still looking down, and I tossed out an idea. And I
think I made myself clear already, Jamie. We are taking a 65% of our revenues that we are generating. The amount that the city of Santa Cruz would be allocated in this is 1.7 times the amount that they're generating. I think the amounts are reasonable. If you want to go ahead and bump Scotts Valley up $500,000, that's not going to be something that anybody's going to, break a bank over. I don't know how much additional the city of Santa Cruz needs. I haven't heard from them. I've heard you talking about how much they need, but I haven't heard them talk about how much they need. I do believe that they are correct, that the Group W that the Group 4 did a good job of putting together, reasonable facilities planning estimates, and they did a competent job of doing that. I don't think they're bid documents. I think they are reasonable estimates. I think if you had $20 million to upgrade the facility, you would get a wonderful project out of it. You'd get a different project than if you'd had $25 million. But, $5 million is a lot of money, but,
Well,
I don't think we
we're asking
couldn't
for
do
a lot.
it.
I think the renovations for the Garfield and for the Bransford branch are very modest. So
Yeah, no. Nobody's
those
talking about those,
Right.
so-
And the downtown branch, again, much of that it's really, again, a county branch. So 40% of the users of this branch are county residents, not city residents. So there's that piece of it. I've already said, I'm willing to compromise 15%. That means the city will have to come up with close to $5 million to bridge the gap. That's not insignificant either.
Okay, so what you have here is a 17% reduction. So you're talking about a 2% change? Is that what you said, 15%?
Yeah.
Well, 15% reduction from the 28 million, is that what you're talking about?
No, from the option one, that's not what we're talking about.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, but if you're talking about what Group 4 said it was 28 million. So why not start with 28 million and then give me my 15%?
No, I'm starting off with all the needs across the board.
Well, again, the project request numbers differed from the Group 4 numbers because people added things to them, including the city of Santa Cruz.
What did we add?
You added $2 million to the downtown branch.
It was
Oh,
the
the moving
temporary
expenses.
moving expenses and I think some asbestos.
Yeah, because those weren't included. They didn't estimate, and that's just a requirement of, if you're going to remodel this building, I think really the library services felt like they needed to operate somewhere, so there's a need to operate somewhere. It's not a betterment. It's not to make the facility better or bigger or somehow unique to Santa Cruz. It's simply to be able to operate the branch while it's being renovated. And I believe that's because library services need to continue downtown. That's the reason for it. It's not for any new, to meet any new community need that's specific to Santa Cruz or anything that's going to benefit Santa Cruz. It's all to benefit the system.